All right, so today we are diving into something pretty cool, and that is Tkinter buttons in Python.
Yeah.
You are going to be amazed at what you can do with these things. Seriously.
It's true.
We're talking about like making your programs come to life, not just lines of code, but like actual buttons that you can click on.
Yeah, it's like taking it from, like a text-based game to like a graphical adventure.
Yeah, exactly.
With like awesome visuals and stuff, you know?
Yeah. No more just staring at text on a screen. Like we are going full on graphical user interface GUI with Tkinter as our trusty sidekick.
Yeah, and the best part is you don't even have to be like a graphics wizard or anything to use it.
Okay.
Think of Tkinter as like a set of building blocks for your GUI. So it provides all these like ready-made components, buttons, menus, text boxes, all that jazz.
So you're saying we don't have to like code every pixel from scratch?
Exactly.
Nice.
And our deep dive today focuses on one of these awesome building blocks, the button.
Okay.
And we've got this awesome technical documentation from plus2net.com. And let me tell you, this thing is packed with tips and tricks.
Okay, so where do we even like begin with all this? I'm looking at this first code snippet here.
Yeah.
And it seems pretty straightforward. Import Tkinter, create a basic window.
Right.
But can we maybe break that down a little bit?
Absolutely. So that first line you see, import Tkinter is TK. That's basically just like telling Python, hey, we need to use this special toolkit for building GUIs.
Okay.
And then that TK part, that's like our magic spell to conjure up a blank window, which is like our canvas for creating the interface.
I like the way you think of magic canvas. So it's like setting up the stage before the show begins, right?
Exactly.
And what about that myweb.geometry line? Is that where we like give our stage some dimensions?
You got it. It's like saying, make this stage 300 pixels wide and 200 pixels tall, using that specific syntax.
Okay.
Without it, you just have like a tiny little window, and nobody wants that.
That makes sense. All right, so we've got our stage, we've got our window. Time to add the star of the show, the button. And would you look at that? The code is surprisingly simple.
I know, right?
Just DK button, some text, and boom, a button appears.
It's deceptively easy, right? But here's the thing. Tkinter is all about simplicity and readability, and that's actually a big part of why Python is so popular, especially for beginners.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm seeing some other like interesting bits in here, like this grid. What is that all about?
Grid. That, my friend, is our layout manager.
Okay.
Imagine you're like designing the interior of a house.
Okay.
You wouldn't just like toss furniture around randomly, right? You'd want it arranged neatly and, make it look nice.
Right.
That's precisely what Grid does for our buttons and actually all the other widgets we might use too.
So it brings order to the chaos.
Exactly. It's like having this invisible grid system on your screen, allowing you to arrange all your GUI elements, your buttons, text boxes, whatever, in a structured and visually appealing way.
Okay, this is already making more sense. But let's be honest, a button that just sits there is kind of, well, boring. What makes these Tkinter buttons truly special? What can we actually do with them? So we've built our stage, we've placed our button, but like I'm itching to make this button actually do something, Right. Can we make that happen?
Oh yeah, that's where the real magic of Tkinter kicks in, and it's called event handling.
Okay.
So think of it this way.
Okay.
You've got your button just sitting there, minding its own business,
right,
until someone, clicks it.
Yeah.
That click, that's an event. And with Tkinter, we can tell our program exactly what to do when that event occurs.
Okay, so it's like setting a trap for like unsuspecting clicks.
Exactly.
But how do we actually, how do we tell the program what to do?
It's all about connecting the button to a function,
Yeah.
which is basically just a block of code that performs a specific action. You see that command attribute in the code example?
Yeah.
That's like our connector. So we basically say, hey, button, when someone clicks you, run this function.
So let me guess, that function holds the instructions for whatever we want to happen.
Exactly.
Like make a funny sound or, change the button's color, anything like that.
Yeah, you got it. And speaking of things happening, check out that first example, the one with the myo.destroy.
Right.
That little bit of code, believe it or not, actually closes the entire window when the button is clicked.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
That's all it takes, just that one line of code?
That's the beauty of it.
Wow.
Tkinter handles all the complex behind-the-scenes stuff for you.
Yeah,
so you can just focus on building your awesome interface without getting bogged down in the nitty-gritty.
Okay, that is pretty impressive. It's like a magic trick almost.
It is.
Except we get to be the magician.
You are the magician.
I like it. I am seeing another example here though with the Is that another function that we can connect to a button?
Exactly. So this just shows you how we can, trigger different actions with like different buttons or even like with the same button,
Yeah.
depending on, what's going on in your program. It's all about just connecting those dots.
This is blowing my mind. Okay, so we're not just limited to like closing windows anymore. We can make like anything happen with like a single click.
Anything you can imagine. Yeah.
But what about something a little more, visually interesting?
Okay.
Could we say, make text change when a button is clicked? Like, is that possible?
Absolutely. You're thinking ahead, and the answer is a resounding yes.
Okay.
This source code actually has a whole section on that. It's titled Updating Label Text on Click of a Button, and it demonstrates just that.
Wow, okay. I'm seeing something about a labels config method. What is the deal with that?
So a label in Tkinter is basically just a way to display text in our window. Like think of it as a digital sticky note.
Okay.
And this config method, that's how we can like change that label's text, its color, the font, all sorts of different properties.
So when the button's clicked, the code uses that config method to modify a specific label's text.
Precisely.
That's so cool. I'm also noticing this Lambda function being used here.
Oh, yeah.
What's its role in all of this?
Good eye. Lambda functions are like these little code snippets that you can use on the fly.
Yeah.
So imagine you need to do like a quick calculation, like adding two numbers together.
Right.
You could write a whole function for that. But with a Lambda, you can just define it right there in the code, like really quickly and easily.
So it's like a shortcut for like writing more concise code.
Exactly.
Especially in situations like these where we need like a simple action tied to that button click.
You nailed it. It's all about writing efficient and readable code.
I'm all about efficiency, so I like that.
And speaking of efficiency, are you ready for another level of button control?
Okay, you got my attention.
Because it gets even better.
Hit me with it. What else can we do?
How about the ability to enable and disable buttons based on what's happening in our program?
Now, why would we want to do that? It sounds a bit mean to just like disable a button on a user.
Not mean, but smart. Think about like online forms.
Okay.
You wouldn't want someone submitting a form with like empty fields, right?
Right.
So you could disable that submit button until all the required fields are filled in.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right.
Yeah, it's like guiding the user through the process and like preventing them from making mistakes,
Exactly.
It's like we're making our interface smarter, right? Like guiding the user, preventing errors before they even happen.
Right, exactly. And, the best part is the code for enabling and disabling buttons is, again, surprisingly straightforward.
Okay.
That B2 state snippet we saw, it's basically like a switch flipping between, normal, which means it's active,
Right.
and disabled.
Right.
You can even tie this to other events too, like checkboxes, text fields, and that way you're creating a truly dynamic user experience.
So it's like our buttons can like react intelligently to what the user's doing, making our programs feel so much more interactive.
Exactly.
This is awesome. I'm starting to think we've covered just about everything there is to know about Tkinter buttons, Like, what else is there?
Well, we've definitely covered the essentials, I'd say.
Okay.
But believe me, there is a whole universe of like customization options just waiting to be explored.
Okay.
Remember that long list of button attributes we kind of skimmed over earlier?
Yeah.
Each one of those lets us fine-tune the look and feel of our buttons even further.
Okay, now you've piqued my curiosity. Like, we talked a little about grid for layout.
Right.
But what kind of like visual magic can we do with these attributes? Like, give me some examples.
Okay, let's start with something simple, like changing the background color of the button.
Okay.
So instead of being stuck with that like default gray button, we can use the big attribute to like really spice things up.
I like it.
You want a bright red button that just screams for attention?
Yeah, why not?
You got it. Or maybe a soothing blue button that blends seamlessly with your like calming meditation app or something.
That's a good idea.
No problem. It's really up to you.
So it's like choosing the perfect like paint color for our buttons.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about when the user actually clicks the button?
Yeah.
Can we give them some sort of like visual feedback, like making the button change color when it's clicked?
Absolutely. That's where the active background attribute comes in handy.
Okay.
It's like setting a different color for the buttons like pressed state. That way the user knows, like, okay, my click registered, something's happening.
Oh, okay.
It's all about providing that like instant visual feedback.
Right. It's all about making the interface feel responsive, intuitive.
Exactly.
And I'm
Exactly.
already imagining all the cool, like, color combinations.
Right. The possibilities are
Oh,
endless.
yeah, this is going to be dangerous, haha. But let's not forget about the buttons text. Can
Right.
we customize that as well?
You bet. We can change the font, the size, even the color of the text using attributes like font, FG for foreground color, and so on.
Hold on, FG for foreground color. So Tkinter uses, like, abbreviations for some of these attributes.
Precisely. It might seem a bit, cryptic at first,
Yeah,
but once you get used to it, it actually makes the code shorter and easier to read.
right, right. It's like learning a new language almost.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
once you know the vocabulary, it all clicks.
Uh-huh. It all clicks. I like it.
And speaking of clicking, I'm seeing this really cool attribute called cursor.
Oh, yeah.
What's that all about?
So this one lets you actually change the mouse cursor when it hovers over the button.
Wait, seriously, we can have like custom cursors for our buttons.
Yep. The source material even gives an example of using a boat cursor, so you can imagine like hovering over a button, seeing a little boat icon instead of the usual arrow.
That's hilarious. Okay, I'm sold. I need to try this cursor thing. That's
It's
awesome.
those little details, right?
Yeah, that make Tkinter so fun to work with. Seriously, it's so cool. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface here, though.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we haven't even touched upon adding images to our buttons, creating like toggle buttons or using different button styles like check buttons and radio buttons.
There are even more types of buttons. This is incredible. I'm starting to think this deep dive was just the tip of the iceberg.
It's more like we built a small raft and now it's time to set sail and, explore the vast ocean of Kint.
Ooh, I like that.
But don't worry, the documentation we've been dissecting, it's like our trusty map, right?
Yeah.
Guiding us through these uncharted waters.
I like the sound of that. So, for our listeners who are ready to like embark on their own Kinter adventures, what would you say is like the best way to like continue exploring? What should they do?
The key is to just experiment. That's really it.
Oof.
Take the code snippets we've been discussing, tweak them, see what happens, break things.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to dive into the documentation, try out different attributes, see what kind of creative and unique buttons you can bring to life.
It's all about experimentation.
The possibilities are truly endless with this stuff. It's really amazing.
Well said, well said. You've heard it here, folks. Dive into Tkinter, experiment, and most importantly, have fun creating those awesome interfaces. Until next time, happy coding.